how to live off of your Bitcoin without spending any of it and without giving any of it away and without purposely screwing your future generations over by getting rid of the toughest asset, hardest asset humanity has ever created. Firstly, if you are considering this, it means that you are finally understanding what this asset is. Because a lot of people's strategy to deal with Bitcoin will be to liquidate a portion of their Bitcoin at a certain time in order to live off that until the next cycle comes around. That's a decent strategy, and I understand it, and I understand why that's been relevant up to now. But there are smarter strategies. As soon as Michael Saylor said, you just borrow against it, and then you refi on that. Everyone wants to do that, but not everyone can do that, and most people will fuck themselves up completely by trying to do that. It seems like humanity is quite interesting. It seems like as soon as we get something good, we want to figure out how to screw it all up as quick as possible. Bitcoin is the opportunity. I don't invest in any Bitcoin startups. I don't invest in any Bitcoin, companies that are being built. I don't buy pieces of fucking Bitcoin art. I don't do any of that for my Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the opportunity, not the ancillary things that people want to maybe create that might turn into a success. At some point, will I use my Bitcoin, generate liquidity, and invest in other businesses? Absolutely, but that's not right now. And that's a key thing that I think we need to talk about. A lot of what I'm saying is about right now, right? Which is, again, a reason why it's important to subscribe, because this is an evolving conversation. This is a new baby asset. This is a evolving conversation, and this, what I'm saying today may not be the answer that is around next year, or let alone 10 years from now. I guarantee you it won't be what it is in 10 years from now. So my perspective on borrowing against your Bitcoin, and since 2021, anyone who was listening to me on Clubhouse where you didn't know who I was, you didn't know my face, you didn't know anything, the first thing I said was borrowing against your Bitcoin is the stupidest thing that you can do at this point. And yet, people are addicted to being stupid. So what did they do? They gave their money to Celsius, they gave their money to BlockFi, thought they could borrow against it, generate a small yield, and do other shit with a Bitcoin with an asset that's got a potential 85% dip in every bear market. So firstly, they didn't do it smartly enough. Secondly, the institutions that are around right now are not optimal. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what anyone says, who the companies are. You don't have enough money to pay me to tell people that borrowing on your Bitcoin is a good idea at this point. You don't. I don't need sponsorships. I don't need any of that shit. So I'm not a podcast. It's just me and my camera trying to tell people to buy as much fucking Bitcoin as they can as quick as possible and hold on to it for 100 years. So I don't need that. You're not going to catch me by saying, oh, you should use this service at this point in the market to borrow against your Bitcoin, because I don't believe there is any service right now. And I believe institutional funds will figure out a way to do it in a much smarter way, and institutional businesses will do it in a much smarter way. That might go against the whole Bitcoin ethos and all this other stuff, and that's absolutely fine. I'm completely okay with that, because I believe that people holding on to their Bitcoin is more important than actually trying to get creative with it and then screwing themselves. So it is not the right time right now to borrow against your Bitcoin. It is not. Right? We need to wait until the institutions show up like that first realtor. And they're not doing that right now. Everything is, we have this token and that token and all this other bullshit. I will much rather borrow against my Bitcoin from BlackRock than I will BlockFi. And I don't care if BlackRock owns a piece of BlockFi or whatever the hell. I would much rather borrow it directly from my asset management team at BlackRock or Goldman Sachs, right? For example. So it is not the right time yet to do this. However, here's what I think is coming down the pipeline and where it may be right. And this is why I believe the ETF is extremely important. Because there is such a thing, some of you may not know that this is even possible, but if you own, for example, the S&P 500 Index Fund, SPY, You can take a what's known as a stock loan against your share ownership of that S&P 500 index fund at pretty much Fed rates. Pretty much Fed rates. You can get a 50 to 70% loan to value, and it's completely safe. It's completely fine. It's completely regulated. It's doable right now. So what do you think makes more sense? Do you think it makes more sense for them to create new regulation, try and figure out how to do, loans against Bitcoin that people hold their private keys and all this other stuff from an institutional perspective? Or does it make more sense to say, if you want to take a loan, we'll give you preferential rates? For example, right now, last time I checked, Unchained Capital charges 12% to borrow against your Bitcoin, right? Well, when BlackRock comes along and says you put your ETF up as collateral and you're going to pay 3%, the incentives move straight to putting it into the ETF. Because if you understand finance at that level, you're not going to be paying the extra 9% because you understand that it is just a financial game. This is how it's always worked, by the way, right? If you have $100 million of prime real estate that your family has owned for generations, you don't sell that when you want to, do another project. You go borrow against it, you put up the property as collateral, you borrow against it, and then you use the capital that you've borrowed in order to do the projects that you want to do. As long as you can generate a return higher than the interest rate, you're absolutely fine. So this is what I believe is the future of it. And what I will do is as follows. I will, at some point, not right now, at some point, I will borrow against a portion of my Bitcoin to generate liquidity. And I will only do it when an institution that is reputable enough has come into the game. And we don't know when that's going to be. And again, another reason for people to subscribe, because this is an evolving conversation. So I will do that at some point. My metrics for doing that are as follows. I will borrow against 10% of the value of my Bitcoin, maybe 20%, at the 200-week moving average. That's it. That's my secret, right? 200-week moving average, borrow against it at 10%. There is virtually no chance of being margin called on that. So what should you do now? Like, people ask me, like, how do you live off your Bitcoin? You fucking don't. You don't. It's the hardest asset humanity has ever created. You don't live off of it. You hold it. You bear hug it. Hug it like it's your child. Right now. That's what you gotta do. So what is the things that people should be doing right now? Very simple. Figure out a way in this expansive world to create fiat opportunities for you and your family to have a good living experience for the next 10 years. I don't think there will be any proper worthwhile borrowing facilities against Bitcoin or the ETF when it gets approved at some point in the next year. I don't think there will be good borrowing opportunities for at least 5 years after that. So let's stick to 10 years, right? Just to err on the side of caution. After that point, by the way, and I know I'm saying 5 to 10 years, and it's not really that, because as soon as the ETF comes out, you plug that ETF straight into the stock loan programs that are already in existence for 100 years, and you're off and running. So it might be sooner, but play it safe. Plan for 10 years. Extremely important. Create value in the world. Stop being lazy. Stop being arrogant. Stop thinking that just because you own Bitcoin in 2023, your life is fixed. Stop that. Plan to hold it until 2033, until anything, until you do anything with it. Figure out how to create liquidity events in the short term, fiat liquidity events. And then by 2033, there will be opportunities that are reliable, stable, safe, and secure, and fully regulated for you to borrow against Bitcoin one way or another. So that's what I wanted to leave you with today. I get this question so much. I want to know how you're going to borrow against Bitcoin. Don't. That's the answer. Don't. Focus on creating value in the world. Focus on generating fiat events in the world by creating value for the rest of the world and hugging your Bitcoin as tight as you can. Because ultimately, while this is an evolving conversation, you should subscribe because it might change tomorrow. There are only 3 rules to Bitcoin. It's step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.